And welcome to Drafting the Dregs. This is your place to go for all things EPL Draft Fantasy. We are back again, Mick and I. Now, it's just the two of us again, Mick. Do we have the other co-hosts running scared, given our amazing banter and just chemistry that the two of us have?
I was thinking about this earlier. I reckon we can be considered the panelists. We're just missing our guests today.
Yeah.
It's basically just our pod.
Yeah. And I mean, it's sort of like we're the lead commentators, and you know how they have the analysts sort of standing by. I mean,
you got we got the analyst. You've got the touchline injury report updates.
I think that would be Dave. Dave, because I feel like Gilby's the expert analyst. You know, given what he brings. Obviously, you and I, the lead commentators, and Dave's just like on the sideline with an umbrella, hoping not to freeze to death.
I can definitely see that. You know what? I can see Gilby sitting there with a touchscreen whiteboard, drawing lines about different positions. That does work. And you know what?
Yes.
Being a teacher, he would know how to work that whiteboard too.
I think so. I think it's a beautiful sort of way to look at the dynamic at the moment. But because we're the lead commentators, we don't need those other guys. We've got it covered. We can sort this out. We can sort this out. So.
I reckon we can safely say now, without knowing the numbers, I don't think our pod did any worse than normal because they weren't here. Am I right?
You don't think?
Nah.
Look, I think you could be onto something there, to be honest. But hey, you never know. Maybe this is the week for us where it just all blows up and we all of a sudden get 1,000 people watching our live stream. Very unlikely, but you never know.
If that happens, they're not welcome back.
And Mick's not talking about the viewers. He's talking about Gilby
definitely.
And Dave, just to be really
viewers
clear.
Are more than welcome back. Dave, Gilby, you're gone if that happens.
Very, very good. Well, let's get into it. I think, we usually start with moment of the week. I don't think there's any other fitting moment of the week than 2 hat-tricks in one game in the same team.
Impressive.
There's not much you can really say about that. And I mean, not only did Haaland get a hat-trick, he also got 2 assists. So, I mean, quite literally, Mick, is there anything that he actually can't do?
I'm yet to see it.
Okay.
Yeah, there's so many stats going around at the moment that he's scored more goals, or he's got the same number of hat-tricks as Premier League hat-tricks, as Ronaldo, as there's just a multitude of these well-known players.
Yeah, it was also that it's only taken him 8 games.
8 games.
And the others had like 40 games and 50 games, and he's taken 8 games to get 3 hat-tricks.
The other stat I saw was he's now played 100 games, I believe it is, and the number of goals he's scored in those 100 First League games. Now, you got to consider the quality of the leagues these players were in, but Haaland has scored 104 goals in his first 100 games.
Yeah.
To put it in perspective, Messi had 41. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know if that's all at Barcelona or if there was some of these Boca Juniors. Boca Juniors is a River Plate background, Boca, I think, before that. And Ronaldo had 16, which is ridiculous. So, in saying that, Ronaldo obviously was more of a winger, so goal involvements might be a different story, but he's a freak. And I realize he's come through Salzburg and in Norway before that, but man, it's unbelievable. And you'll have a very different opinion to this, but he's kind of killing our fantasy league. I'm not going to lie. When we'll get to the scores later, but when the average score is sitting around the 40, when you have one player scoring 23 points, it's ridiculous. Now, I was thinking about going through our previous years of fantasy and trying to work out the average score for a first-round draft pick in our league. I reckon Haaland could get appearance points from here to the rest of the season, and he would hit that average.
Yeah.
Literally not score another goal, if he gets appearance points, so 2 points for, 29 games remaining, another 58 points, he'd be at 150. You'd be pretty happy generally if you can guarantee 150 points. You're not far off.
You're quite literally happy with that. Look, to put it into perspective, he's almost scored 100 points, like you say.
And he's almost double
If
second.
Well, let's in terms of our league, right, and our league table at the moment, if you took that 100 points from me, that would mean Gilby's in the lead, 376 points. If you gave my 100 points to literally anyone in that league, bar Craney, they would be leading. Right? Or, give or take, because you have to take a few points off because, but like just as a general, very quick glance at it, like that's just insane that he's had that much influence and scored that many points so quickly.
And
so
I'm not going to lie, after I woke up, what would have been Monday morning after the derby was on, public holiday here, that I had a quick look because I wasn't quite sure if I remembered the podcast where I predicted the pre-draft pod where I suggested what I thought the top 9 would be. And I remembered I had the top 4 and I said, look, you could stretch Haaland into the top 5, but there's a little bit of risk with a new team. And I remembered Gilby having an opinion on it, and I wasn't quite sure if he straight out said, I don't think so.
But I think it was something like that.
It wasn't quite that much. He said there is a big risk, and he referenced how often he breaks down and how he will get injured. Well, if I was you, I'd be pretty happy with 96 points in 9 games, even if he does get injured. And like I said, you get appearance points from there out.
Yeah.
You're still going pretty close to 200 points.
I mean, he's got all of the World Cup to recover as well if something were to happen.
Yeah.
He's just an absolute freak. And I mean, even though, he broke down a fair bit, like he's scoring, even before he got to the Premier League, he's scoring a goal a game.
Yeah. So
like, it's unheard of. It's unheard of. So I think, who has the point scoring record in EPL fantasy?
I believe it's Salah with just over 300. I don't know if many players have ever broken the 300 mark.
I feel like Suarez may have broken 300.
Possibly.
Like you've got to assume like of course, if he keeps on this current rate, he's definitely going to break 300. But you've got to assume, even if he doesn't keep going the way he is, he's breaking 300. Like it's just insane. It's crazy. What are they going to price him at next year? Like, are they going to price him at 15 million or something? Like, well, it's crazy.
We'll go from the most recent. I've just found the top scorers from each individual year. So last year, Salah got 265. Yeah. So in a quarter of the season, in 25% of the season, he's already passed 33% of the way there to that top score. Yeah. Fernandes, 244 the year before. De Bruyne, 251. Salah, 303 and 259. Okay. 264 for Sanchez, Mahrez 240 in the Leicester season, 233 for Hazard, 295 for Suarez, 269 and 262 for Van Persie. So it's ridiculous that he's almost at 100 already. I think I just went there. 2010, Lewis Nani only got 198. Now, I don't know if they changed scoring system or if they've applied that back to them. But that's the only season no one's reached 100. Now, in a quarter of the season, he's already halfway there.
I feel like Salah was very similar last year, though, wasn't he? It was like after 10 games that he was very close to 100 points.
In terms of goal involvements, I think Haaland has one more than Salah had at the same point last year. Salah just had more assists, less goals, which obviously fantasy points-wise loses a couple. But I don't know how... I would assume it's got to be pretty similar in terms of... but every goal would be worth an extra point, so... It
would be. So it'd sort of cancel out
probably
fairly well, I think. Look, it's just insane. I think you're right. He's sort of... Whoever has Haaland at the moment is winning probably most draft leagues, I would assume.
Absolutely.
Unless after getting Haaland, you drafted so poorly that you're literally getting no more points. May happen. Who knows? But
even if you're picking players that play, if you've got 10 other positions in your team and they all get 60 minutes, there's an extra 20 points, right?
Yeah.
If you times that by 9, it's 180. You're still at almost 300 points. Now, if I look at my team, or say bottom in our league. Yeah, there you go. If that's where you're at, if you say Haaland has 100 and then
Yep.
you get 180 other points, is that what I just worked out?
Yep.
You'd be at 280, which is 1 point more than my team.
Mick,
So,
what you've just described is your drafting strategy for next year.
so what I've just
That's
described
literally it.
is I was never had a chance to win because getting last pick from the wheel has screwed me over there. No, basically anyone that didn't get top 5. Now, what I can safely say is, what pick in the draft did you have? 4 or 5?
5.
So there's 4 guys in our league who are kicking themselves right now because they had a chance.
Oh yeah. Look,
What I can say
Nathan,
is myself, Nathan, Ben, and Dave.
Yeah.
Dave took Son.
No, Dave took
Jeff
Kane.
has
Craney took Son. Jeff took Salah because he was first, and yeah.
Then Gilby took De Bruyne. So surely this. Who else was after that? Dan, maybe.
No. It went Jeff, Gilby, Craney,
Oh, I've literally got it here.
Dave, and myself.
Yeah, and then Dan was after you.
Yeah.
So Dan, myself, Nathan, and Ben never had a chance.
No.
So I will say, out of us, Dan's doing quite well because he's beating myself, Nathan, and Ben.
Yeah. Dan is in a very good sort of pack there around between 3rd and 5th. So he's done exceptionally well. He's doing really, really well. Nathan said to me the other day, for him, Haaland was his number 1 draft pick. Like if he got first pick, he would have gone Haaland. That's what he sort of maintained. And he said that to me like right from the very beginning too. So he always had big raps on him. Yeah, it's just worked out like that.
In Nathan's defense, or more so in the lack of my ability to defend myself, is I wasn't going to take him number 1 because it's on record.
It's a big risk.
I had him in top 5, but I just didn't know for sure that I could risk it. But 100%, if I had 5th pick like you did and the other 4 had gone, there is no doubt in my mind who I was taking.
Yeah.
But they got those 4 guys above that I said can only have themselves to blame. Hey, I said exactly the same thing and I don't necessarily blame you. I had all those guys in the same kind of bracket anyway.
Yeah. No, fair enough. Look, I think, we'll just have to wait and see what the rest of this season brings. It's still very early on, but yeah, you've got to say that Haaland's had an incredible start. Obviously, the person we haven't spoken about is Foden, also getting a hat trick.
I only saw the goal highlights earlier. Have you seen the goals? The first finish by Foden, kind of the ball's a little bit behind him to hit that near post. Oh that's a quality finish.
It was a great hit. So I think everyone's known for a long time that he definitely has good quality. It was always a matter of how often is he getting rotated and who's going to pick him up, when is he going to get picked up in the draft because of that. But you got to say now that with Haaland there and the way that they're sort of playing, Foden's a must. He's going to be there more often than not in that side.
He's also had 8 starts this season, which is comparatively to Pep Roulette is insane. I think he started every game, right?
Yeah.
Maybe missed 1. Whereas I think Haaland's only the same. So whether that changes with fixtures congesting soon, whether Grealish being injured has been part of that. And whether Alvarez starts not pushing his way in necessarily, but can get into that. Because they've played him on the right wing, I think, once or twice. Maybe that was in Champions League. So it's not like they don't have options. Obviously, Bernardo Silva, they've got as who can drop back into that cam centre mid role.
Yeah.
Interesting to see what they do, but I think it's pretty nice to have a set and forget forward in your team like Haaland.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see how it continues to go. Like you can have Haaland, but you still got to make sure you got other guys around him playing because there's some really good teams in our league who can score really good points. So we'll wait and see what that looks like. Now, before we get into the waiver wire, we did talk before we streamed, you and I, Mick, about, making sure that we're talking about Premier League. We're not necessarily talking about Australian football or any other leagues. We had a reason for that. I'm not going to talk about that, but I'm going to break that rule because I want to give you an opportunity to talk about West Brom in regards to Roger Watch.
Mm,
Now, he played on the weekend. Really
he did.
quickly, how'd it go?
I did.
I know we're
Un-
breaking rules here, Mick. I'm
yeah,
sorry,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I want you to talk about West Brom.
Unfortunately, being in the championship, it's hard to watch some of their games.
Ah,
So he did get a start, but he was playing in the deeper centre mid role, which isn't his preference. He is much more. He's much better at carrying out. Now, without saying too much, West Brom lost again. But on a personal note, Rogic would have had, in fantasy terms, 0 points.
wow.
He got 57 minutes with a yellow card. On FootMob, the site I use, they've rated him as a 6.2. So didn't have a whole lot. I'm assuming, without having actually been able to watch the game, I mean, looking at the stats, we should have doubled their score. We had 2.2 expected goals to their 1.1. We lost 3-2. So
Wow.
it's a frustrating one. But I'm assuming they're using his on-ball ability to try and drive through lines, rather than pass through lines, trying to, I guess, carry the ball a little bit higher up the field to allow their number 10 to play that little bit higher. But that's not what he's good at. They need to find a different way. And we've obviously, I don't think we've mentioned yet, but Wolves manager being sacked as well.
Bruno.
So as to how Steve Bruce has still got a job in the championship, I don't know. Without wanting to big up the team I support, they should not be 21st in the championship with one win from 11 games. Put simply, especially when we've got quality, we should be. I'm not saying we should be in the Premier League, but we should be top half in the championship relatively comfortably. We've always been known as a yo-yo team that goes up and down, so we should be vying for the title of the championship, not in 21st and almost relegation. And if I look at the teams around us, Middlesbrough just sacked Chris Wilder, another former Premier League manager, and they're below us on the table with 2 wins from 11. So I don't quite know how, when we have a worse defense, we have less wins. I don't know how it hasn't even been spoken about. Anyway, it is what it is. We're not doing well. Rogic hasn't started super well, but that is the manager's decision not to play him where he's probably at his best.
Well, what we'll do, instead of, boring our tens of thousands of watchers with a league that's not the Premier League and a player who's Australian, every week I'm just going to ask Tommy Rogic Watch, and you're going to give me what his fantasy points would be. That's all I want.
I will attempt to.
And I think that gives us enough sort of a look into that world, if you will. So,
best part, there's actually a game at 5 a.m. tomorrow. We play Preston, and it's on BN and KO. So I might get to watch the first half at least before I have to go to work.
There you go. Maybe
by this time next week, Steve Bruce will have lost his role, and I don't know, maybe we can sway Big Ange to come across. No chance. In saying that, we'll make a little segue. Have you seen, I don't know what former Liverpool player it was that came out, but has said that he thinks, actually it was a former Celtic player, I think it was Chris Sutton, who said that he thinks Ange will be the next Liverpool manager.
Okay.
Which, big call, but
very much so.
I've put a few big calls out here, and I actually said I could see him going to City.
You did.
I would argue that if he goes to Liverpool, I would say that's closer than any one of the mixed multis has ever been.
You're probably right. Yeah.
And
I think he's
probably long enough odds too.
Absolutely. Especially when you predicted it. There you go. Well done. We'll have to wait and see. Maybe mix onto something. So, look, what we will do, we will have a look at the waiver. Now, because Gilby wasn't with us today, what he has done, he has actually put together the waiver, and he has put his grades to each of those as well. We didn't have them last week, but he put them together for us this week, which was really good. I don't know if that's because he watched the stream and thought, no, these guys aren't doing a good enough job. We need some grades in there, which I understand. That's fair enough. But he's done that for us. Now, Mick, are you happy to go through those?
I can indeed.
What I may do, I might just bring them up on the screen because, hey, we have the technology and we can sort of look through it at the same time and try and figure out what is going on. So obviously just going to look at the most recent waiver and we'll sort of go from there. And let's now have a little bit of a look. So Mick, talk us through it, please.
I was first.
You were.
So the first one is I picked up Callum Wilson, dropped DCL. Now, Gilby has given that a B. Interesting. I mean, DCL hasn't returned from injury as of yet. I don't know if he made a token appearance off the bench this week. No, he still hasn't made an appearance this year. Wilson had come back from injury. They said he was ready to go. And the other thing with that was Isaac had been ruled out for Sweden duties. So I also knew I was carrying Patson Daka in my team. So I wasn't quite sure. And Mitrovic had a bit of a cloud from his Serbian duties. So I needed another forward just to make sure. So I picked up Wilson. I was tempted to hold DCL, but decided to pick up Wilson there. Got me a goal as well, I'm pretty sure off the top of my head. Gilby's given me a B. Now, we spoke about this before we started, but I reckon the only reason he didn't give me an A is because he didn't want to admit the correct call was to drop DCL. I think that's why he didn't give me the A. But hey, Gilby can defend that next week if he wants to. So after that, Nate picked up Fabio Vieira for Gordon. On face value, I mean, Gilby's given it a C. On face value, when I look at it, I'm intrigued. I don't know much about Vieira. I haven't watched much of Arsenal. My first instinct was, is he a guaranteed starter? And I was a bit surprised.
I don't think so.
He'd been, I assume, on the bench or not in the squad for the first 5, didn't get a minute, came off the bench in game 6 for 16 minutes, then scored a goal and got a clean sheet playing 90 against Brentford for 10 points, but then went back to the bench this week. So a bit of an interesting one for dropping Gordon. Now, I think we spoke about Gordon last week and how he hadn't been picked up yet in the draft and how that surprised us both because he'd been playing as an out-and-out striker. But maybe Gordon's value has dropped a little bit with Morpie coming in and DCL coming back. And then obviously he didn't get the start this week. So in hindsight, dropping Gordon wasn't the end of the world. They both got similar minutes, same number of points. I still would prefer a more attacking player in a Gordon-type role rather than Vieira, who I think is more of a holding mid-defensive type role. If he was a guaranteed starter, different story.
I think he's a bit more of a playmaker, but I think Odegaard has that sort of spot now down.
Yeah, definitely. So I think it wouldn't surprise me if he gets waived again this week for somebody else. So next up, you've got Dan, who's dropped Leon Bailey for Potence. Gilby has given that one a C. Basically, it's just swapping attacking outlets. To be honest, I look at that and I think C is probably a little bit harsh. I think Potence is a more guaranteed starter. This is without any research. I don't know if you want to bring it up. And Potence, I'm pretty sure, has started the majority of games, has got more minutes than Bailey anyway. And Wolves have generally, what's that? So he's had 6 starts and 2 off the bench. For 2 goals, whereas Bailey's probably 3 and 3 or 4 and 4, sorry. So pretty close to half and half. 2 on the bench. So you could argue that Bailey's actually started more games. So he's interesting. Wolves, are they a better attacking team? Well, I wouldn't necessarily say so. Villa's got good fixtures. Okay, there you go. I understand why it's a C. Gilby, did your research. Good job. Next up, Jeff dropped Harvey Barnes, picked up Rodrigo, I'm assuming from Leeds.
That's right.
There, it's on the other way there. So picked up Leeds. I will be honest, that's one I looked at as well. Rodrigo coming back from injury for Leeds as a midfielder who I believe would basically be playing striker in that team. Very tempting. Dropping Barnes, though, he was the guy that he got from me in a trade last week or 2 weeks ago. Interesting one if it's guaranteed early returns. Unfortunately for Jeff, Barnes scored this week. Leicester got a 4 win. So it wouldn't surprise me if Barnes is a pretty popular asset come this waiver wire. So not Jeff. Gilby has rated that one a D. Be interesting to know if he would have said it's a D before he knew what the games were as well. Obviously, in hindsight, yeah, it is, but prior to that, it'd be interesting. Next up was Gilby. Dropped Digne for Castagne. Digne, Dorito of Death, pretty easy, straightforward. Gilby hasn't rated him himself, so I mean, a Dorito of Death, it's hard to give anything under a B when you're getting rid of a player who guaranteed wasn't going to play for a player who would.
I mean, we may talk about that a little bit later, though, for some reasons that you and I are aware of, but we don't want to spoil that right now because it could have been in his best interest to actually just leave Digne where he was. But anyway, we'll talk about that later.
So picking up Castagne, I believe Leicester going into this round had the 3 promoted teams in their next 3 games. So it's a pretty straightforward pickup there. May not be a long-term thing, but short-term with Pereira out as well. It's going to be there. I'm just seeing some live message come through. Jeff is not happy getting rated a D for that trade. So we'll see if there's any other comments there. I can't wait to hear them. But Castagne, I think, is a pretty good trade. I was next. I actually picked up the other side of the field, the left back, Justin, and dropped Connor Cody. So a little bit of an interesting one. I thought Justin, like I said, had a good run of fixtures for Leicester. Leicester haven't been great, but they've been okay. They just haven't necessarily been getting the results.
You got to think they've got a lot of upside, Leicester still.
Yeah. And then I dropped Cody. And unfortunately scored a goal and got a clean sheet, so 9 points. I mean, Leicester did get a clean sheet as well, so I still got 6 points for Justin. So it only cost me 3. It's just an interesting one. It's one of those where I wanted to bring him in. I just wasn't sure who to get rid of and probably chose the wrong one. But when you look at my team later, my defense was pretty solid across the board this week. That's where I got the majority of my points. So I don't think there was really anywhere I could have made that a better trade while keeping a defender trade. Next up was Dan. I dropped Kelly from Bournemouth, Dorito of Death, for Anderson for Palace. Gilby's given that one a C. I personally would give that an A. I spoke about it last week. I was talking to Ben. He picked up Anderson, ended up dropping him because he didn't have a game. I think Anderson's a great defender. Again, hindsight, though, is Anderson didn't play muscle injury, I'm assuming.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, first game of the season, he didn't play. So unfortunately for Dan, it was a nothing trade in the end. So give it a C, but I still think long-term Anderson's going to be a much better option than Kelly. The last trade, if we go over to the free agents, is yourself, Isaac. Now, I'll give full information. You dropped John Stones. You picked up Simicast. Gilby has given you a C. I told you before that. I think that is extremely harsh.
I'm angry and upset.
Yeah, I think this might have been done after the fact when he knows what the scores were. But Stones is a Dorito of Death, and you're bringing in a player who Klopp had already said would be starting for Liverpool in an attacking wing-back role. Even if it's only a 1 week thing, I don't really understand how you can give that one a C. It's got to be an A. Hindsight, obviously, Simicast didn't do that well for you. We know that.
No, he did not.
But he did not do any worse than Stones, and you're not any worse out for it. So giving
true.
that one a C is a bit interesting, but
I would have thought maybe something higher than that. At least a C plus, Gilby. Come on. But I mean, this is this defender, this position for this defender is like my swing defender where I'm just trying to get as many points as I think I can in this position week in, week out. Like, I know Simicast isn't a long-term fix, but neither is Stones because we know that he's not going to start when everyone's fit. So, I'm just trying to get as maximum points, many points as I can possibly get. And I thought Simicast was a pretty safe bet. He might have one more week in him. And if we just have a look at fixtures, they've got Arsenal. Doesn't sound great. We'll just have to wait and see. The other thing that's a bit concerning about him is that he's been coming off before the 60 minutes. So he's not getting that extra point either at the moment. So, we'll have to wait and see.
Is that just because they're chasing the game?
It potentially could be. Yeah, I'm not sure who he was substituted for. I doubt it was another defender, surely. Who else did they have to bring on, realistically, in terms of a defender? So
probably James Milner.
Oh, actually, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you bring on James Milner? But yeah, look,
It actually
I'm
was
just
James Milner.
look. At the end of the day, I'm just chasing points, and I figured it would be a pretty. It could have yielded a few more points than it did. It didn't. That's okay. It's a risk you take. But as Jeff says, Gilby, his marking needs to be moderated. I mean, I'm sure Gilby's moderated marking plenty of times before. It's only fair that maybe that has to happen in a fantasy sense as well. We'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah. So that was the extent of the waivers this week. Not too much really to talk about. Big thing that I noticed is, and I was sitting in 8th that week, but nothing from Craney, nothing from Ben, nothing from, was it Dan as well? No, Dan did pick up one. Dave also didn't put anything in. So interesting that a few of those boys, I'm assuming, just got busy with stuff and didn't get a chance to, but
Yeah.
particularly Craney and Ben, it's something that you need to try to look at if you want to try to have a chance to come back later this season.
I think it's one of those things where it's easy to get into a routine with it, but because the routine's been out a little bit, I can totally understand where you would just totally forget to do something. So we'll wait and see what happens next time around. I think before we look at our league ladder, now Gilby also sent through a lot of other stats as well. It's probably the right time to go through those because they relate to the game week. And, you know, for any fans who actually watched the game week, there was a lot of goals scored. There were some interesting results, and it had a big part to play in a lot of fantasy points being issued. So, Mick, are you happy to maybe go through those? There might be a couple of talking points as we go.
I'll touch on them really quickly. So I'll pretty much read them as it is, but the notes Gilby has: Madison, 2 goals and an assist. He had 42 touches in the final third, which is 12 more than any other player on the pitch in the Leicester-Nottingham Forest game. He created 4 chances. So interesting one there. He's come into form in a good time. Wasn't in the most recent England squad. Got to think if he keeps up that form, he's going to get close to getting called up, surely. From there, we have Forest has lost 5 in a row, conceding 3 in each of the last 4 matches. The big thing that Forest saw is a change in formation. So they've gone away from the 3-back into a 4-back, or a 5-back, I guess you could almost argue it is. So whether that changes Nico Williams and his attacking license. Now, I saw a stat this week which had the expected goals, the top 3 expected goals scorers for each team. Nico Williams was second for Forest behind Brendan Johnson. So for a right wing back, I think you're doing pretty well to get up that high. I guess they have rotated through one of their 25 signings in striker, so they've probably shared around that role. The other thing I noticed, though, is I think he actually got subbed off at halftime for Serge Aurier. So I think he may have lost his attacking license, but he may have also started to lose his role in the team. So be interesting to see if they do go to a 4-back, whether Aurier gets preferred to Williams now. Because you have Williams, don't you, Isaac? Is that something you're worried about?
I do. Look, he most probably won't be in my team next week. I can give you that. So I'm looking elsewhere because I just don't think Forest are right now are the team that people hoped they would be. And like you mentioned, they've got 25 new players. It's you know what it's sort of like? It's sort of like, you know, when you're playing just a Saturday or a Sunday league game, as we did back in the day, and you've got a ring in, and you're like, you don't really know who this ring in is, but you're like, hey, if anyone asks, your name's Barry. Okay, that's what it's written down as the team sheet. Your name's Barry. It's almost like they've got that, but they've got that for like all 11 positions on the field, and so they don't really know each other. They're like, let's give each other just a generic name so at least we can call out and hopefully somebody answers and we can try and play a pass. They just don't know. They don't even know who their best 11 is realistically. So, I mean, it's just, they're a bit of a shambles to me at the moment. So
I'm just loving the thought of the Serge Aurier and Awani, their striker, and just someone yelling out, yeah, Barry, yeah, Bazza, pass the ball. I just think that's a great sight.
Top, Barry. Yeah, absolutely.
Sight.
I mean, we've all been there.
Oh, we have. Moving on there, Callum Wilson, 29 attacking returns in his 48 appearances with Newcastle after he scored the goal on the weekend. So interesting to see what they do when Isaac does return with St. Maximin as well. I don't know if one of those, Wilson doesn't strike me as the type of guy that can go out to a wing. Whether they maybe play a really narrow formation and put, say, Max in behind with two strikers, or whether they just play one striker and someone gets rotated. So something to think about. And to make it even worse is Almiron scored 2 on the weekend on the right wing. So, which is as many goals as he scored in his past 37 matches. And I'll admit, and I think I even mentioned to Ben when I was talking to him, is Almiron was one that I actually had on my watch list. I just, with the fixtures, I just couldn't bring myself to get him. And knowing that his record isn't that good, he gets into good positions, he just doesn't seem to score that many. So not necessarily a great fantasy asset, just couldn't pull the trigger on him. Unfortunately, is another one of those what could have been. So keeping with Newcastle, Kieran Trippier consolidated 3rd spot overall in defenders table with another clean sheet, but bit of luck there, he got subbed off right before Fulham scored their goal. So myself with Trippier there really helped my team getting the 6 or 7 points. But I think the best part is anyone else that had a Newcastle defender lost the points, which helped me even more. So big swing there for me. Keeping with my team, Trent Alexander-Arnold, the Liverpool Echo, the newspaper over there, gave him a 3 out of 10 rating. But they said that he's still actually the second for expected goal involvements among all fantasy Premier League defenders. But he's only created 2 opportunities in his last 3. So it's interesting, and I know Jurgen Klopp made a point of it, of pointing out how poor defensively they've been. It'll be interesting to see whether they start to rotate that. Now, who was the centre-back pairing? Did Matip finally get the start? Do you know? I'll see if I can bring it up.
That is one thing I actually don't know. Let's have a look really quickly, because I know Nathan's got Matip. Now, he did get 1 point. Yes, he played 90 minutes.
It was Matip. So Matip and Van Dijk finally back in the partnership together. Now, there's a video I've seen, I think it was of Van Dijk, who in a Brighton raid is just almost rooted to the penalty spot. And he just watches everything happen around him. And he just doesn't seem to be moving like the Van Dijk, the commandeering defender that we all expect him to be. So I think I'm going to be a little bit biased here, but I think Trent's copping a lot of that. Now, don't get me wrong. He's not a great defensive right back.
Yeah.
But he's still a great outlet for them, particularly going forward. But it'd be interesting to see whether they consider a change in formation. Like, you throw a Kanate into the middle of Van Dijk and Matip, play 3 centre backs. You put Robertson and Trent as the marauders forward, where they can actually allow that freedom to get up there forward. You could still play a Fabinho and a Henderson in behind them. And then you've got your Firmino, who can play that kind of link role between the two, with effectively Diaz and Salah up front. I mean, talking it through, it seems like it would work. Give them that little bit more solidity. I guess the question is, would that extra defender help them? I guess it takes the pressure off Trent and Tsimikas or Robertson. What is Thiago or Harvey Elliott currently offering them that the solidity and defensive help to cover their wingbacks would do? So it's interesting. I don't think Klopp's one that would necessarily change his ways, though. I think he's pretty set in how he wants to play. And to be honest, they should be good enough to do it, right? They're one of the Premier League's best teams. That some people were saying a couple of years ago, they're probably the best team to never win the Premier League title. Arguably, yeah, it might be right. But they've got some work to do at the moment, because a lot of their team looks nowhere near like they have been, which goes into the next one. So
yeah, go for it.
Mo Salah had more shots than any other game so far this season, received more passes in half spaces rather than wide. So I'm assuming he got more ball in better positions in that game. So they did score 3 goals. Salah got 1 assist. That was it. 2 goals for Bobby. I'm assuming, it must have been an own goal as well, I think. And Diaz got another assist. So interesting that another 3 goals, basically no attacking returns, not the attacking returns you'd expect. Interesting to see where Salah is. At the start of the season, I would have taken Salah first if I had first pick. I definitely would have. But he's hurting at the moment. I think it's Jeff that has Salah. It's frustrating when, particularly for Jeff as a Liverpool fan, but frustrating when Salah's not getting in the points he wants, particularly when other first rounders are hauling.
I think it's important to remember that they played like every single game last season. and then they had a reduced off season as well because they had to get back early for the World Cup. So I think that there's probably some fatigue going on there. And considering like they didn't really restock in a vital part of their midfield as well, like they probably needed to get some better bodies. And I'm not saying that, your Harvey Elliott's and guys like that aren't going to be good enough, but you probably just need some more battle hardened guys in your midfield to help carry that load a little bit more because they're going to be tired and they've got guys who in that midfield who are aging and who do break down. So I think that therein lies some of the problem because they're just not holding the ball. They're making those silly mistakes due to fatigue. They're not able to get back and help defensively as well as maybe they have in the past due to that as well. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see maybe if in January they're looking for some people. They're looking for some more bodies to help them out. And then, of course, there's obviously talk about, Jude Bellingham and things like that moving forward. Like, are they going to get him? Is he going to help them out to the point where they, regain some of that form that we've seen them over the last sort of 4 or 5 years? So,
Well, yeah, and I was just having a look like at the World Cup actually, which countries are going in. Basically, what players would get the benefit of a rest. So we've spoken about Haaland. Norway didn't make it. I'm pretty sure they didn't. So he's going to get that whole month off. Luis Diaz actually will as well. So Colombia finished sixth in South America. Fifth was Peru, who obviously Australia got to play, and we beat on the way there. So it'll be interesting to see whether, particularly in the next...
Salah gets the rest.
Yeah, he gets 6 games or so.
Yeah, there's talk that, TAA may not go. Like, who would have thought that he doesn't even get in the squad? You'd think that he'd get in the squad, surely. But, hey, that's what they're talking about. I can
understand that you've got effectively Kieran Trippier, did a job for them at the last World Cup. You've got Kyle Walker, Reece James, both of those two as well. So I think that they've kind of claimed that he's the fourth choice right back at the moment. But the fact that Southgate doesn't rate Trent in that right wing back role, when I've just mentioned that maybe that's something Liverpool should do, it'd be interesting. Now, we're obviously recording this on a Wednesday night. They've had Champions League this morning. I haven't actually seen it, but Trent apparently scored a wonderful free kick in a clean sheet performance. So fantasy-wise, they're doing great guns there. Unfortunately, it doesn't apply to it, but it'll be interesting to see what happens there. It's probably... I think I just needed to go one way or the other. I need him to either come out with blistering performances and get me points, get selected for the World Cup and go, or completely bomb out, have the full rest off and come back fully fresh and then just annihilate the second half of the season. I think worst case scenario would be a couple of points, get picked, play a little bit, get really fatigued, come back and keep going at that kind of meh level to not get any points. So, I mean, that's where I'm at. But
you know what would be great to see in the World Cup? England final, they make the final somehow. Who knows how? They get a late free kick. It's 0-0, late free kick in like the 89th minute. The ball's 25 yards out from goal on a nice angle. And you've got Maddison, you've got Ward-Prowse, you've got TAA, and you've got Trippier all standing around the ball. Who decides who takes it? And I mean, they're all so good. Does it really matter who takes it? Wouldn't that be amazing?
Yeah.
Who are you backing in, though? Who are you backing in?
From those? Ward-Prowse.
Yeah. Ward-Prowse every day?
Yeah. In saying that, out of those 4, I think he's the one that's least likely to get minutes. I would say who is likely to actually take that? Trippier. I think he's the one that's most likely to actually start. And then Harry Kane's another one. He can take a free kick.
True. I actually just hope that they all they all want it. So they're all just like everyone's got their hands on the ball and they're all just trying to like take it off each other. That'd be beautiful.
There's only one man that can save that. His name is Harry Maguire.
Oh, no.
I can just picture it now. Him walking in, taking the ball, putting it down, getting them all to rock off to see who wins it. Anyway, keep going with Gilby's notes here. So
Dave would say something about getting rocks off at that point, but
yeah, he
I
would.
mean,
He
that's a
would.
different thing. Yeah.
Or scissoring, it could be something like that.
Oh, no.
Next up, we've got Bobby Firmino is actually level on the table with Jesus in goal scorers, which everyone's talked up how good Gabriel Jesus has been going for Arsenal, but the fact that Firmino is equal with him, interesting.
Yep.
Next up, Trossard, hat-trick, gives him 9 goals, 5 assists, and 106 points from his last 13 games. But there's no midfielder that's overachieving more in expected goals than him after he's scoring with almost 30% of his shots so far. So it's an interesting one. Now, I remember when I first started reading into this expected goals and what it means and what it is. And Brighton was one team that always overperformed the XG or always underperformed. It never applied the way you'd expect it to have applied. Trossard seems to have just continued that.
Yeah.
So even now with Graham Potter gone, it'll be interesting to see if Chelsea now starts with that. But I sent it to you guys, but I bought the expected goals philosophy. So I guess a book about one of the guys who not invented it, but really popularized it and how it came about and how it applies. And I haven't fully read it yet, but one of the things that I've learned from it is, I guess, how to apply it a little bit more.
Okay.
And I actually use this with the Liverpool-Brighton game. Now, if you look at, different pages will have slightly different, but they obviously finished 3-3. Liverpool had a 2.15 expected goals. Brighton had a 2.37. So I would say, according to that, you'd expect it to have been a draw. So a draw is probably a fair result. But you always see those kind of results where it's the team that peppered the goal and had more shots that you would have expected them to win. But what I've actually read is it's actually the other way around. So if you've got the same quality of expected goals, so you're both expected to have scored 2, if one team took 6 shots, which is what Brighton took, and one team took 15 shots, which is what Liverpool took, the quality of the chances that Brighton had were significantly better.
Gotcha.
So out of their 2.3 expected goals, they are going to overachieve more often because of the quality of their chances. Right. Liverpool, with 15 shots, they're taking 0.1s, 0.2s, very unlikely chances that for them to have scored multiple to have won that game is way less. So I found that a little bit of an interesting one. I'm a bit of a stats nerd in that sense, and I think Gilby will appreciate that if he doesn't already know it. But it's interesting that when I look at that 3-3, people will say, 15 shots to 6, Liverpool were hard done by. Well, it's actually no. Brighton were the ones that more often than not, if you were to replay that game, would win more often than Liverpool would.
Yeah, right. That makes total sense. I think I've been really struggling for a while as to how to properly apply that. So I think just looking at that one stat alone maybe doesn't tell the complete picture. You probably need to look at a few other things. That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, and when you kind of think about it, it does. And it was interesting that when I was reading about the history of it, it all started with betting companies, as everything does, that all these companies were paying these statistical, I guess, I don't know whether it was university students, which is what this guy is, but a university student to do all this analysis and to break down these tens of thousands of shots and how often they're likely to score it from these angles with the people in this position and everything like that. But they actually used it to create this analysis to then bet on certain players scoring because they overachieve consistently and stuff like that. Anyway, these betting companies actually made all of this money from it, and that's how he started to apply it. But then he realized that when it started getting to mainstream media, people just weren't applying it correctly. So he's written this book. Anyway, once I get to reading it, I'll pop in a bit of information here and there, and I'm sure I'll share it around, and some of you guys can have a quick read of it as well. But super interesting stuff, and definitely helps with the application.
I believe the guy who wrote that book, he was on the Guardian Football Weekly podcast last week and or maybe the week before, and sort of discussed a little bit about, where it came from and a few things around it. So it was interesting to listen to. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what you make of it, I guess, moving forward.
Yeah. Only a couple of points left to go. Granit Xhaka is now 10th in mids for points with 5 attacking returns from 8 starts. Now, this is an interesting one because as a player I've had this season, I got in that trade and I immediately dropped. Jeff was telling me how he's playing in that more advanced role. And I said, well, he's still their number 6, really. He's still their screening kind of midfielder. But he is getting into some great positions. And when we were going through the waiver while before and I saw Fabio Vieira there, it's like, well, I wouldn't surprise if I had to pick right now. I know who I'd be picking out of those two. A, the captain, the one that's more likely to actually play, and B, the guy who has 5 attacking returns in his last 8 starts. So he's getting into some good positions. The finish he had on the weekend was quality.
Yeah,
Running forward, left foot across the goal, and Laurie's never really had a chance for it. So interesting one there. I think particularly with the 9th player we now have in our league and 45 midfielders out there, I think you can do worse than having Granit Xhaka in your team right now. Next up, we've touched on it. Wolves have sacked Bruno Lage on Sunday after they've only scored 3 goals so far this season. Going back, I can understand now why Gilby gave Dan that C, picking up a midfielder or attacking outlet for Wolves. 3 goals from 9 games, not ideal. 8 games, I think it might be now, not ideal. So interesting to see who they replace him with. I know Ange Postecoglou is one that they have been linking. I don't see it happening. I think he'll stick out with Celtic a bit longer, but I just don't know who else they're going to pick up. So we've spoken about Haaland a fair bit. 23 points, the highest individual round this season. We've spoken about that. Foden hat-trick means he's up to 3rd in the mids. Also has the 2nd most shots in the box, I'm assuming, behind Haaland. And has started each of City's 8 matches. So we've touched on all of those things. And Harry Kane lastly here. So 2nd place overall with 56 points, I think he has. And he's got 7 goals in 8 matches. So, I mean, you'd be pretty happy with that. If you got told your number 1 pick's averaging 7 points a game after 8, scored you 56 points, you'd be very, very happy with that. He's on track with 7 points a game to get almost 266 points.
Yeah.
That's almost
you're happy,
the top scorer every year.
Yeah, you're happy with that until you then see Haaland's stats.
Absolutely.
That's the current problem.
So
that's the current problem.
And that's why I go back to Haaland is breaking our league.
Yeah, fair enough. Is there any more, or is that it?
No, that's it. That's it, done.
Perfect. Very good. Well, we must thank Gilby for those pieces of analysis. We do appreciate that, and we're glad that we could get that out to whoever is going to be watching and listening moving forward. So it is time to look at the league. It's time to sort of analyze and see where everybody is and what the movements are. So I'm just going to put this up on the screen really quickly. Our league is going great guns at the moment. We have Craney still in 9th place, only 26 points. We've got Nathan and Ben have been overtaken by Mick in 6th place, but it's still really tight in that pack of 3. We've got Dan, who we spoke about before, doing really, really well with Dave and Jeff just above him. And then in front, bit of a gap now to Gilby in 2nd place. And then a small-ish sort of gap to myself in 1st. So we will have a look at some teams really quickly and sort of chat a little bit more about them. So let's start off with Craney now. Unfortunately, Craney has regressed a little bit. He had the worst score of the game week with 26. Again, I haven't seen a game week that I can remember where there's been so many negative and 0 points. It was just that week. There was lots of big scores, lots of defenders doing really, really poorly. So, only Shah getting 6 points there. He had Aubameyang getting 9, but other than that, only appearance points and a -1 for Webster, which wouldn't have been great.
Well, he had 3 automatic substitutions happen. So all 3 of his subs came on for a combined 1 point. He had 2 people get 1 and 1 get -1 to make 1, which that's pretty impressive. And I think it's going to happen a few times in our league when we go through it, but it's it's pretty rough going there.
Very rough going. So yeah, those people drop out: Gomez, Jolinton, Rodri. I think Craney may have a little bit of work to do, maybe dropping some of those guys, seeing what he can pick up in that waiver. Just not going so well for Craney at the moment, but he's giving it a red hot crack, which we appreciate and want to see. So from here, if we go up to Nathan, now Nathan's dropped down into 8th place, 28 points, which isn't fantastic. 11 of those coming from the Leeds keeper, Meslier, which is pretty impressive for a keeper, I must say. Let's look at how he got those points. Clean sheet, saves, so 2 bonus, and then 3 bonus because it was a 0 draw. So obviously he had a lot of saves and was very, very busy, which is good to see. So 11 points out of the 28 for Nathan. So very, very happy that he picked Meslier rather than Ramsdale there. Welbeck with 5, Martinelli with 4, and then just sort of 1s and 2s and a 0 from Varane, who came off the bench, I believe. No, he did not. He just
I
picked
think
him and
he
left Vardy
started
on
and got
his bench for
injured.
5. Yeah, he did. And he did message me about that, and he's like, "Yep, I can definitely pick him, can't I?" So he wasn't too happy with that. Left
Hey,
Vardy
he's
on the
not
bench
alone
for
this week.
5. No, he's not alone. But Vardy on the bench with 5, so he got a bit of a return this week with an assist or so with that big win that they had over Forest. Good news is, obviously, Matip is back. I believe Laporte came on for some minutes and is back as well. So he's going to have his best defenders very, very soon, which he'll be very happy with. But I think, you know, it was a big trend at the beginning of the season, especially in normal fantasy, going big at the back. And I don't think at the moment that has played out too well. I'm not sure if you agree with that, Mick, but
Yep.
that probably hasn't paid off for a lot of people. Last year seemed to be the year where you could really go hard if you wanted to with your defenders. This year, not so much. So I think that maybe people will be changing their tactic a little bit there with the defense, I would say.
Yeah, I was just having a look as well. We spoke about Varane and how he got 0 points, but you can say it's a bit unfortunate that he had Vardy on the bench for 5. But if he didn't get injured, he could have been on for negative because there would have been another three goals there that he would have conceded. He would have got -1. So I think
True.
actually going off injured may have saved him a point there.
There you go. So Nathan, that's a little nice thing for you there. You've
Silver
got an extra
linings.
point, silver lining. You've got an extra point. So let's now have a look at Ben in 7th place, 30 points. So a little bit more than the two below. Only 1 point behind you, Mick. Now with that 30, we've got Thiago Silva with 6. We've got Ben White with 5. Ericsson with 5. Was able to get a return there when Martial came on. Anthony was on the bench for 7. He's probably going to be kicking himself a little bit about that, leaving Anthony on the bench. I can understand it, though, playing Manchester City. But I've always said you got to just keep your best players on, even if they have a bad fixture. In my mind, I'd keep my best players on there. You got to say Anthony's one of his best players. We said it last week. He's got a cracking midfield. Look at that midfield. Like, if they all go, he's going to get some good points. So I'm sure we're all just waiting for that. And look, at the end of the day, there's still a bit of potential there, and I'm sure he'll still pick up some good points moving forward, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think that it'll be too long until he starts getting it. The question is, does he have the players to haul him points that he needs? I think Ben's season will rely on how Graham Potter goes with Raheem Sterling. I think if he can get Raheem Sterling firing, Ben can bring his way back into it. If that doesn't happen, I think he's going to struggle to make up significant ground. He can make a mid-table. He can get out of that bottom kind of 2, 3, 4 that we're kind of stuck in that at the moment. But I think he's really going to rely on Sterling and to a lesser degree Cancelo. But I think he definitely needs the big scoring middle forward to get him out of that hole.
Yep. No, absolutely. And I must say, Ericsson's played a lot more than I thought he would, but I guess Ericsson's a quality player and probably deserves to be playing in that midfield for Manchester United. So hopefully he can keep getting some points. And with Anthony there, there's still an option to try and trade with the likes of Gilby if he really wants to and get something different. But Anthony's been scoring some good points so far since he's come to the league. So no need to maybe get rid of him just at this point in time. Again, if we go back, we have Mick. You're in 6th place. You made a move. You were able to get 1 ahead of Ben and 4 ahead of Nathan. Now, we were talking about before that although you're up into 6th, which is great, you made a little bit of a tiny move. It does mean that you don't get maybe the trade picks that you're maybe after because you are going to be 4th in line now, which isn't ideal for you, obviously.
No.
But,
and I think looking at my team, like I hinted at it before, but the main spots that I'm lacking at the moment is, yes, my big hitters aren't hitting. And in that, I'm referring to Allison and Alexander-Arnold at the moment. To a degree, Mitrovic as well, you could say, because he's been so good this year. And then my midfield is completely missing. You take out those 3 I just mentioned, and even my bench back and forward scored 5 points. So it's just my midfield had absolutely nothing there. And then those other 3 that I mentioned. So Alexander-Arnold, 0 with conceding 3 goals. I think he got a yellow card as well, which wiped him out. And then Mitrovic got an early yellow card and then went off injured in the first half for 0 points. So those two combining for 0. Allison only getting the 2 for, I assume, some save points in there as well. Outside of that, the rest of my backs, I got 7 for Trippier, 6 for Justin, 7 for me, and I left 5 on the bench for Creswell. And then my forwards, I got Wilson for 6, and then Daka came off the bench for a lovely backheeled goal. I don't know if you've seen that. But a ball from Madison out from the right where he's kind of flicked it. Reminds me of David Villa against Australia in the World Cup for Spain. Same kind of thing. Daka's, I think, was a little bit further out, though, which was pretty impressive to have beaten Henderson, the Nottingham Forest keeper, from that distance. So I think, for me, it's definitely a midfield issue at the moment. Mitrovic, even with that little Dorito there, will be staying in my team, especially while Isaac's out and Wilson will be starting. But I think Neto is pretty likely to be making way this week. So Saka, Gray, Sancho. Saka and Sancho are guaranteed to my team. Eze for Palace, probably going to. I think they just had Chelsea on the weekend, so he'll probably slot straight back in. No issues there. Gray can be traded out. Neto will be, like you said. Wolves just haven't been that good. New manager coming in soon, whoever that might be. So he'll be making way. It's just a matter of who I can actually get to replace him there.
Imagine if you kept Xhaka. Just imagine. Hey, how great would that be?
Or if I kept Barnes.
Or if you kept Barnes.
Either of the two.
Yeah, I mean, and Saka actually had a really good game. He just didn't get any points, but he played really well. Yeah, so his time will come. He will get on that roll again, I'm sure. So, but yeah, I think there's definitely room for you to get a few different midfielders there, and just try your luck and see if you get some different points.
Like I said, it's a frustrating week, having scored 35 and moved up the ladder, but I've actually dropped points from first overall. So it's a frustrating one to have made that move up while still moving down, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Fair enough. Well, there's a little bit of a gap now to Dan. So, he's been doing really, really nicely. He got 39 points this week, so was able to get 4 more than yourself. If we have a look at, he's nearly getting to the 40-point mark, which is always a good thing. Luis Diaz with 4 points, Jesus with 8, Richarlison with 5, and Firmino with 12. They were the big hitters for him. Nothing really left there on the bench. Diaz got a bit of a rest. I didn't think he was injured, just they decided to rest him because they're only playing Man United. Why not? Harrison with 3, so he got a clean sheet bonus. But realistically, he might be a bit upset with his defenders, I would say. I'm sure he was probably hoping for a lot more from Chelsea, Man U, and Arsenal in terms of some more points there. So what could have been maybe if those 3 teams had a clean sheet. But he's been doing really, really nicely at this point in time.
Look, I'll point out, I'm having a quick look at Dan's history there in terms of how points per game week. So he's gone 42, 52, 50, 39, 40, and then a bad week with 24, then 39, 39.
Consistent.
That is very consistent.
That is the key. Absolutely. Not dropping big points regularly. So that's great.
And I mean, you can look at his score this week, and yes, he had 12 for Firmino and 8 for Jesus, but he's had that consistently. So if he can get, I guess, and I think throughout the season, we'll start to learn the better players you can have in your team. And by now, we should know that try and avoid those 1s and 2s. Obviously, they'll happen, but to avoid too many of them. But he's got enough of that consistent base everywhere else that if he can get a Luis Diaz or a Mahrez or a Jesus to haul, then he can score really, really well and break the 52 mark. I think he's got the players there to do it. Like I said, Diaz, Mahrez, and Jesus, they can all do that pretty comfortably. Theoretically, Richarlison, Kulusevski's injured. If he keeps starting, he can do it as well. Firmino can. We know that. He's done it twice already this year. His team's not too bad at all. He just needs a little bit of luck. He got a little bit unfortunate. I spoke to him last night that Cucurella didn't actually play. He got 0 minutes, and he had Andreas on the bench for 2 points. But unfortunately, it wouldn't have made a legal formation, so he couldn't make that automatic substitution. So I think Diaz getting rested and then Anderson also not playing has really hurt him there.
Yeah, no, fair enough. But yeah, lots of points potential there for Dan, and like we said, he is going along really, really nicely. And he's only 3 points behind Dave, and Dave got 37 points this game week. So if we have a look, Fabianski with 7, and Skamaka with 8. So West Ham finally did something. So Dave would have been really pleased with that. Kane with 6, and otherwise again just appearance points. Couple of clean sheets with Tielemans and Jensen with 3 points apiece. If we have a look at the bench, Botman with 5, he could have really used that, and Gomez with 3, but Botman's probably the big one there that I'm sure he wish he played. Again with Dave, he's got a lot of points potential, especially in those forwards. He's looking really good with forwards at the moment. You got to imagine that Darwin will click at some point in time potentially. Skamaka's finally got himself a goal, and Kane is Kane. But he went big at the back, so with James and Perisic, hoping that those good boys would pick up some more points, and unfortunately they just haven't managed it so far in maybe the last few game weeks.
Yeah, it's kind of seems like a weird season. Like you alluded to it before, but last year was a big at the back year. The year before that, it's always been a midfielder's game. This year, it kind of seems like the forwards. If you got the strong forwards, you can do really well in this. Obviously, you got the elite guys, but like you just said, Dave's forward line's really strong there. Dan's a second ago, Richarlison, Jesus, and Firmino really strong there as well. Maybe what's next year going to be the year of goalkeeper?
Yep. The thing is, though, if you're having strong forwards, that means you are sacrificing your midfield a little bit. And we know that, generally speaking, midfielders are where you get most of your points. But, I mean, that's a conscious decision that Dave definitely made. And he's been through that as well when he's gone through, looking at his draft where he did look at Kane and Darwin very early on. But, midfield, he's just got to be – I'm sure he's looking for opportunities in midfield to maximise his points potential. How long does he keep someone like a Jensen if he's not doing all that well? How long does he keep someone like Tielemans if he's not doing that well? Or Elise, who's really only just come back? I like him. I think he's a great player, and hopefully he plays a bit more. Again, doing pretty good, but he does have sort of Dan breathing down his neck a little bit, and he isn't too far away from Jeff. So, if we have a look at Jeff again, here's where we have some negatives coming into the fore.
There's with a few coming in.
Absolutely. -1 for Martinez, 0 for Dyer, -2 for Emerson Royale. So that is -3 points from his defenders, which I'm sure he was irate about. Edison with 2. We got Salah with 5, Foden with 19. Not too much going on anywhere else. So it was really a Foden show for Jeff, and that's really helped bump up his points this particular game week.
If you take those 15 players that Jeff has, you take out his 5 midfielders,
oh, wow.
The other 10 players scored a combined 3 points.
Oh, no.
And 4 of those are from goalkeepers, so 2 for each goalkeeper, 1 for Jota, 1 for Bamford, and then -2 for Royale and -1 for Martinez.
That's insane.
And then 3 guys didn't play, so having that guy who can haul is massive.
Can you imagine? Because obviously, these other guys, Koulibaly didn't play. None of those guys. Can you imagine if for whatever reason he didn't have Foden, or he was on the bench and someone else got 1 point or something like? Oh, that would have just been horrific for poor old Jeff.
Horrifically funny.
Sure.
I mean, we would laugh about it. I think it would go down in our league history as the round to remember or the round to forget, depending on who you are.
I think for a lot of people it sort of is, because you think about it, and even just those slight differences to those defenders not getting negative and getting 2 points would have made a big difference to some.
I'm just imagining. Imagine Foden did only get appearance points. Yes, he takes off 17. His game week score would have been 14 points.
Yeah.
And imagine he then goes to win the league. I would love to have bought him a jersey that said round 9, 14 underneath it. How good would that have been? Oh,
hey, may still happen, and he might take this to heart, and he might decide, hey, if I win, that's exactly what's going on.
You know what? I'd appreciate that if that happened.
Oh, that's perfect. Well, he's got a bit of a gap to second place, which is Gilby. Gilby does have about 40 points on him. So 48 points this game week. Now, Gilby is one that I'm sure would have been very interesting to talk to him about, with maybe his frustrations in this game week, because we have seen a lot, and I mean a lot of negative and 0 scores, especially in defense. But it's not often that someone with 48 points Oh, I just need to refresh this really quickly. Someone with 48 points, where that's the second highest for a game week, actually has a further 20 sitting on their bench. Here it is down at the bottom here, a further 20 points. I'll just keep pointing this out for people at home. 20
How many
points.
points? 20.
I believe 20, 2-0,
Oh,
Mick, 2-0. So,
I
look,
mean,
he's,
you've got Alvarez who came off the bench for 15 minutes. You've
yeah,
got Target who came off the bench for 7 minutes.
yes.
And then he'd already made 2 of his 3 automatic substitutions. So either one of those 2 guys are not coming on, and he goes from 48 to 68.
Look, the saving grace, like before the last game of the game week, he needed one of Castagnier and Madison not to play. Now, thankfully for Gilby, his saving grace was that they have combined for an absolute haul of points, 8 and 18 respectively. Like they've absolutely gone nuts, which is great. Because otherwise, I don't know how Gilby would have got through talking about his team.
Oh.
I don't know how he would have been able to do that if Castagnier and Madison didn't get 8 and 18 points. It would have been, I don't know how I would have spoken about it if it was my team. Like, it's just absolutely insane. So he's very, very lucky there, but it could have been so much better. He could have had a further 20 points, like quite easily, at least another 19 points. Like Dallet, -2. If those two had swapped, like that's 22 points that he could have on top of this. So, he would have been absolutely rolling in it with 70-point game week. Like, oh, you got to feel for Gilby. That's just terrible, terrible luck. And I'm sure he'll be kicking himself. And I'm really keen to, when he's on the podcast next, talk about that and his thoughts and feelings behind it. But,
I would argue it's not
still
luck.
a good game week.
I would argue it's not luck. He made the conscious decision to put him third bench. I feel like luck, he's consciously chosen the team in that sense. He's done the right thing to pick up that player, sorry.
Yeah, he has.
I guess, and that's one thing I know I really struggle for is playing midfielders and forwards against good teams. There's really no risk to it. You can play them and not have worry. Defenders are the ones that you have to, there's a little bit more risk there, like we've seen this week with the negative scores.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting one there. Like, don't get me wrong, it sucks. I feel for him. His bench alone wouldn't have got last this week in our league.
Yeah.
But I'd still be pretty happy with 48. Yes, he hasn't made up ground to first because, again, you've won the game week, but he's breaking away from third pretty consistently, pretty well now.
Yeah. But if you have a look at it, like Dallet was his second sub who's come on for Ronaldo who didn't play out of respect for Ronaldo, apparently. And he's coming with -2 points. Like, I'm not sure I would have gone with Dallet before Trossard when I guess both teams were playing really, Liverpool and Man City, but Liverpool haven't been playing that great. So you could sort of see that, it's potentially they might be scored against and Trossard could be the one who does it. So, yeah, maybe not the move I would have made, and I'm sure he's kicking himself for that with a 22-point swing.
I can completely understand that. Yeah, I don't know why you'd have Dalot as your first sub at all. I think if you're not going to start him, I assume the reason you're not starting him is because you're worried about that might happen, in which case get him as far away from it as possible.
Yeah.
Gilby, you've only got yourself to blame. No sympathy here, mate.
Oh, there we go. Well, we'll have to chat with Gilby about that next time. But, his Castagna pickup worked quite well, although if he didn't pick him up, he would have had a further 12 points come off his bench. So, there is that. There is that, unfortunately, for Gilby.
So is it going to be a Manchester United shirt with Trossard 20 on it? Or a Dalot -2 maybe?
Can you get a negative on a... Maybe we have to iron that on ourselves.
We'll just get a 3 or something and rip off the top and the bottom part of the 3 to leave the middle part.
There you go. Very good. Well, look, I think we've done it some justice there for you, Gilby. I hope you're able to get through this one because unfortunately for you, as Mick said, I did win the game week with 52 points, so I was able to get another 4 points away from you. So there's a tiny gap sort of forming. It can easily be overcome in a game week or two, but 52 points. Surprise, surprise. The majority of it came from Haaland with 23 points. Again, my backs didn't do that great. Nico Williams -1. Simicast with 0. Henry thankfully got me 6. I got a -2 with Sinistera, who is definitely going this week because he misses out a game week. Plus, Rodrigo's coming back, so who knows if he'll keep playing or be in the starting side. So that's unfortunate. I was looking forward to maybe keeping him around a little bit longer. Bernardo with 5. Bowen finally came to the fore. I believe he got a goal and an assist, and he got the clean sheet, and he got a bonus 3 points as well. So I'm really, really pleased that now Bowen is finally picked up some points, because if we have a look at his run, he literally picked up only 1 extra points from the normal appearance points in the first 7 games. Now in the 8th game, 14 points, which has done wonders for his points total. So I'm really, really pleased that Bowen is off and away, and hopefully he'll keep on going with that. But otherwise, not too much to write home about, but enough there for 52 points. My bench was pretty static. I made sure that I left Fernandez and Malacia on -2 points. He was definitely my last choice. Kulusevski's injured at the moment, but I'll keep him around because he's fantastic when he is playing. So, yeah, pretty happy with that.
Were you annoyed Martial took the penalty, not Bruno?
No, because I didn't play Bruno.
Fair.
I didn't start him because of the fact that they were playing City. And look, at the end of the day, I could have got some more points if I did play Fernandez, because Sinistera got -2. Let's be honest. But
if he'd taken the penalty and missed it, he could have been on -3.
That's a really good point. So at the end of the day, all has worked out quite well. I'm fairly happy with that. 52 points is good, and it has allowed me to sort of keep in the lead at this point in time. But like I said, that can be overhauled in 1 game week, but definitely 2 game weeks. So we'll just have to sort of wait and see if Gilby can keep charging and make up that deficit. So all's looking good at this point in time. I'm pretty happy with that. And there's definitely a few players here who you will not see next week, and who I hope will improve. So, Tony had a quiet week. Mopai could do better, potentially. So we'll wait and see. Could be hopefully some good returns coming, especially with Haaland playing Southampton. So that could be a really, really nice one. So it's that time where we need to look at next week, isn't it?
It is.
The next game week. So if we have a bit of a look, I'll bring that up on the screen in a moment. I'm just getting my Zoom sorted out. So the next game week starts on Sunday, the 9th of October. Let's bring it up here. We have some good games. We've got Bournemouth v Leicester. We have Chelsea versus Wolves. We've got Man City versus Southampton. Newcastle versus Brentford. Brighton v Spurs. Crystal Palace versus Leeds. West Ham versus Fulham. Arsenal v Liverpool. Everton v Man United. And Forest v Aston Villa. So the game that stands out for me is something like Brighton versus Spurs. Because Brighton are just, attacking at the moment, which I love to see. Spurs attack in a very specific way where they pretty much bypass their midfield every single time. It's almost like they don't have a midfield in an attacking sense. So I think I like that game. I think that could be a really, really good one with Brighton. They do like to keep possession. They do like to knock the ball around and get forward and pass forward and be dynamic. And Spurs will counter that by sitting back and trying to, score on the break. So that could be a really good game. And they were a bit down, Spurs, this last game. So hopefully they will improve on their performance next week. So that's the game for me. Mick, what do you sort of see there?
Well, I only just remembered I was working on my multi and then I forgot about it. So I'm going through it now. But I actually picked that game out as well. As one that I thought had a bit of something about it. Yep. Looking at the other ones, City, Southampton. I say that because could be the end of Hasenhüttl. We know Southampton's prone to a 9-0.
They are.
Maybe.
And
I wonder what
we also know that Haaland is prone to a hat-trick.
Exactly right. So I think that could be an interesting one. I've seen a few rumors about Hasenhüttl. He's lasted there for quite a while, to be honest.
Yes.
And they've always talked him up, but nothing's really come of it. They haven't been great this year. To be honest, they've probably been pretty
But
poor for where you'd
the
expect them to be.
yeah, the thing with Southampton, they can pull out a really good result
They
sometimes as
can.
well. They're very up and down, and they have a very young squad as well, so that's to be expected. You just never know. Hey, you just never know. They might pull
No.
something out.
Other games, I think Palace against Leeds could be a great time for Palace. I think this is probably the start of their really good run of fixtures.
Yeah.
So I think that would be a good place for them to start. Leeds, you just don't really know that they can attack relatively well, but they may not defend necessarily quite as well. Obviously, Arsenal, Liverpool, but I think Everton, Man U as well could be a really interesting one. Everton defensively have been really, really good. So it could be an interesting one to see how Man U respond after conceding 6. Be interested to see what a 0 draw might be paying in that game. But I think, that could be an interesting one there as well. But I've managed to put something together. It's not, firstly,
Well,
we'll
I
go
was going to
through
say
last week.
before you go through that though, I was just going to say with this round week, this game week, I never thought that I'd be saying, "Oh, we've got first versus seventh in terms of it being Arsenal versus Liverpool, not the other way around." Usually, when you
Yeah,
say first versus seventh, you're thinking Liverpool versus Arsenal, but it's actually the other way around. So that's interesting. That's a big turn of the table. That could be a really, really good game as well. We probably should have hyped that up a bit more. And I was just going to say also Newcastle Brentford, I think could be a cracker. So
yeah, absolutely. So my multi for last week, we haven't spoken about it yet. So off the top of my head, it was 4 legs. It was kind of 2 in one game and then 2 others. So it was 3 goals or more in the North London derby happened, which is good. I had
happy
Harry
days.
Kane. I had Harry Kane to be the first goal scorer. He scored the second goal of that game. So unfortunately, that means the multi's off the table there. But I also had Everton to beat. I think it was Southampton they played, which they won 1-0. That was actually an outsider there. And then I also had Liverpool to beat Brighton, which they didn't do. So 2 legs from 4. Pretty close, I would say, relatively on the Harry Kane one. I mean, it's close. He scored a goal, but obviously they
It did.
didn't score it first. But
Yep.
I think $1.33 might have been what Liverpool was paying, not beating Brighton, kind of killed that one there. So, hey, I've had worse efforts, and I don't think I could even say I've had better efforts because none of them have won. So it's about normal. But let's go to this week's.
Okay.
I've got Chelsea to beat Wolves to 0.
Okay.
Straight up,
Yep.
there's the first one. I've got Tottenham to beat Brighton and
Okay.
Richarlison to score a goal.
All right.
So Kulusevski is still a little bit of a Dorito on his name, so I'm hoping Richarlison will start there. And then I've got Man U to beat Everton and Ronaldo to score. So I think Ronaldo will start now, having not played last week. That's a bit of an out there one. May not even get a minute, so it's hard to know exactly, but I reckon he'll get a minute this week, and then I reckon they'll beat Everton. A little bit of a bounce back performance. Those, I'll say 3 things combined, are 40 to 1.
Okay.
So Chelsea to win to 0, Tottenham to beat Brighton, which that alone is probably a tough one. Brighton have been really good. So, and then Richarlison to score, and then Man U to beat Everton and Ronaldo to score.
Okay. I like it. I'm not confident that it'll actually get up. I'm sorry, Mick, based on past performance.
Hey,
But
you need more than just one piece of evidence to make a linear adjustment there, Isaac. So it's not like I've only got one wrong. I've only got, 47 in a row wrong now. To be honest, I could get one right now and I'm still down. That's how many wrong I've got now.
absolutely. So that's a bit of a shame on your part.
I will say, though, that the one that's had the most positive feedback was the round that got cancelled that never happened. That was the one that everyone was up and about. They're going, yeah, I like this one. This could happen. Never happened. They were scared. They were scared of all of our listeners cashing in on my multi.
They were absolutely, because I mean, the tens of thousands of dollars that they might have had to pay out is just too insane for them.
Exactly right.
Too much.
Mate, it's a conspiracy. Someone actually knocked off the Queen.
Wow.
This
Oh,
turned
wow.
this turned very quickly.
I think that there needs to be a spin-off into this is a true crime podcast now.
This is true crime. Yes,
This is
absolutely.
that's what this is. So we need to find an investigative journalist to first of all come and interview you,
Yeah.
and then obviously we need to go right to the top. We need to
And-
interview the royal family.
Yeah.
This could be massive.
It could be. It really could be. I
Wow.
hope you titled this one this week. Who knocked off the Queen? I feel like that'd be a really good quote for the pod.
I may leave that one for now. But I think as the first title of the investigative podcast, I don't see why it shouldn't be that. Yeah, very good.
I like it.
Well, Mick, thank you very much for joining me. We'll wait and see if our lead analyst and sideline reporter are back with us next week. Only time will tell, but fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. We'll see how we go. I think we've done it right again, and thank you for those people. There was a couple of people who were watching on. I think one of them was definitely Jeff. So thank you very much. And look, we will catch up with everybody next week. Cheers. Thanks very much, Mick. See you then.
Thanks, mate.